Hi, this is Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, and you're listening to BriefingsDirect. When applications are mission critical, where they're hosted matters far less than keeping them operating smoothly, as many of them have for decades. Yet many organizations face a reckoning, a ticking time bomb of sorts, to move mainframe applications to a cloud model. The trick is to find a dependable, repeatable way to transition to cloud without degrading these venerable and essential systems of record. Stay with us now as we explore long-awaited means to finally solve the cloud adoption quandary. We're going to learn how Unisys and Microsoft can transition ClearPath Forward assets to Microsoft Azure Cloud without risky code changes. To learn more about the latest on-ramps to secure and agile cloud model adoption, please join me now in welcoming our guests. We're here with Chuck Lefebvre, Senior Director of Product Management for ClearPath Forward at Unisys. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you, Dana. Happy to be here.
We're glad to have you. We're also here with Bob Ellsworth, Worldwide Director of Mainframe Transformation at Microsoft. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Dana. Nice to be here as well.
Hey, Bob, let's start with you. What is driving the demand nowadays for more organizations to run more of their apps in the public cloud?
Yeah, great question. We see that more and more customers are embracing digital transformation, and they're finding the cloud is an integral part of their digital transformation journey. And when we think of digital transformation, at first it might start with optimizing operations, which is a way of reducing costs, taking on-premise workloads and moving them to the cloud. But the journey just starts. From there, customers will empower employees to be able to access the applications that they do need to be more efficient and effective, engage with their customers in new and different ways, and also find ways of using cloud technologies to transform products such as machine learning and AI and BI.
And it's not enough to just have some parts or data. It seems to be that there's a whole greater than the sum of the parts organizations that are seeking to do digital transformation to get more of these IT assets into a native cloud or digitally agile environment. Is that true?
Yeah, that's actually absolutely correct. And the beauty is that you don't throw away what you have. You can take legacy workloads, such as ClearPath workloads, and move those into the cloud, but then continue the journey by embracing new digital capabilities. Again, advanced services such as machine learning or AI or BI. So you can extend the usefulness and benefits of those legacy applications.
And of course, this has been a journey that's been going on for, well over 10 years. Do you really sense that something is different now, that there are just more means available to get more assets into a cloud environment? Is this really a bit of a tipping point?
It is a tipping point. We've been seeing, especially around the mainframe, which is where I focus on, we've been seeing a huge increase in customer interest and selection of the cloud as the destination just in the last year and a half. And one of the reasons that we're seeing that is that Azure has absolutely demonstrated its ability to run the mission and business critical workloads.
Okay. How about the lay of the land? Is these cloud transitions emerging differently across the globe? Is there a regional bias of some sort? Is the public sector lagging or leading? How about vertical industries? Where is this sort of cropping up first and foremost?
Well, we're definitely seeing it occur in all industries, in particular financial services. So again, with mainframes, we find that there's more mainframes in financial services, banking, capital markets, insurance than in any other industry. So we see a propensity there where, again, the cloud has become the destination of choice because of its ability to run mission business critical workloads. But in addition, we're seeing this in state and local government, in federal government. The challenge in the government sector is just the long cycle it takes to get funding for these projects. So it's not a lack of desire, it's more just the time it takes to move through the funding process.
Yeah, Chuck, I'm still surprised all these years into the cloud journey that there's still such a significant portion of data and applications that are not in a cloud environment. What's holding things back? What's prevented enterprises from taking advantage of cloud benefits?
Well, I think a lot of it is inertia and, in fact, in some cases, incorrect assumptions about what would be involved in moving. That's what's so attractive about our ClearPath solution, that we can help those clients move those ClearPath workloads without change. We take that ClearPath software stack from MCP initially and move it and rehost it in Azure, and that application and data comes across with no recompilation, no refactoring of the data. it's a straightforward transition. So I think now that we have that in place, that transition is going to go a lot smoother and really enable that move to occur. I'd second what Bob said earlier. We see a lot of interest from our financial partners. We have quite a number of banking application partners running on our ClearPath MCP environment, and those partners are ready to go and help their clients as an option move their workloads into that Azure public cloud.
Has the disruption from the coronavirus, the COVID-19 disease, been influencing this transition? Is it speeding it up, slowing it down, maybe some other form of impact?
I haven't seen it affecting either acceleration or deceleration. In our client base, most of the people were primarily interested initially in ensuring their people could work from home with the environments they have in place. I think now that that's settled in, they've sorted out their VPNs, their always-on access processes. Perhaps now we'll see some different initiatives evolving. I think initially it was just businesses supporting their employees working from home. My perspective is that should be enabled just as equally well, whether they're running their back-end systems of record in a public cloud or on premises. Either way would work for them.
Bob, at Microsoft, are you seeing any impact from the pandemic in terms of how people are adopting cloud services?
We're actually seeing an increase in customer interest and adoption of cloud services because of COVID-19. And we're seeing that in particular in some of our solutions, such as Teams for doing collaboration and webinars and connecting with others remotely. So we're seeing a big increase there. Office 365, that technology, we've seen a huge increase in deployments of customers using the Office 365 technology. In addition, Azure, we've also seen a big increase in Azure consumption as customers are dealing with the application growth and requirements of running these applications. And as far as new customers that are considering moving to the cloud, I had thought originally, back in March when this was starting to hit, that our conversations would slow down as people dealt with more immediate needs. But in fact, it was about a 2-3 week slowdown. But now we're seeing just a dramatic increase in interest in having conversations about what are the right solutions and methods to move their workloads to the cloud. So that's accelerating as customers are looking at ways of reducing costs, increasing their agility, and really finding new ways of running the workload that they have today.
Chuck, on another area of impact in the market, skills. How are the either lack of ability to find programmers on some of these older languages or the need for skills to run your data centers, is there a skill factor that's moving the transition to cloud?
Oh, I think there certainly is. I think one of the attractiveness elements of a public cloud is that infrastructure layer of an IT environment would be managed by that cloud provider. So as we see our clients showing interest in moving to the public cloud, first with things like, as Bob said, Office 365 and other elements that they've moved to the cloud, maybe file shares with SharePoint and things like that. Now they're looking at, well, can I do that for my mainframe applications? And when I do that, can I no longer be worried about that talent to do the care and feeding of that infrastructure? And certainly as we move those clients in that direction, we're going to step forward and as part of that cloud offering, take care of that ClearPath infrastructure, the day-to-day management of that environment. That'll be embedded as part of our offering. We'll see most clients, rather than managing it themselves in the cloud, will defer to us. And that will allow their staff to be freed up to do other things, or in the case where they have retirements, they'll have less risk in allowing those retirements to occur.
Bob, another issue out there that's been, of course, prominent and top of mind for people is security. And one of the things we found is that security can be a tough problem when you're transitioning, that when you change a development environment or go from development to production or move from on-premises to cloud. How are we helping people understand what they need to do to remain secure during a transition, but also perhaps benefit from a better security posture once they make the transition?
Well, what we always recommend is it's really a part of the planning process. When you're thinking of transforming from the in-data center solutions to the cloud, part of that planning is to plan for the security elements of that. And we always look to collaborate with our partners, such as Unisys, in helping define that security infrastructure and security deployment. What's great about the Azure solutions is we've always focused on hybrid as the way of deploying customers' workloads. Most customers are ready to move everything to the cloud all at the same time. And for that reason, the fact that we focus on hybrid allows a customer to deploy portions of their workload on the cloud and leave other portions in their data center, and then over time transition more and more to the cloud. But during that process, supporting high levels of security for user access, identity management, or even controls of access to the right applications and data. And that's all done through the planning and using technology such as Active Directory and in synchronization with Azure Active Directory. So that planning is so important to ensure successful deployments and ensure the high levels of security that customers require.
Chuck, anything to offer on the security?
Yeah. Yes, we'll be complementing everything Bob described there with our Unisys Stealth technology that will bring some always-on access and isolation capabilities for deployment of any of our applications from Unisys, but in particular the ClearPath environment, whether that be completely deployed in Azure or, as Bob said, that hybrid environment across an enterprise. So we're excited about that deployment of Stealth to complement the rigor that Microsoft applies to that security planning process.
All right. Well, we've described what's driving organizations to the cloud, the fact that it's accelerating perhaps these days, that there's a tipping point in what can be accomplished safely and reliably. And we've also talked about what's held people back or what are some of the challenges. So let's move into looking at what's different and what's a solution to the transition issues. So for Unisys, Chuck, why and how have they reconciled sort of the past with the future when it comes to these mainframe critical applications?
Yeah, so we're able to take these ClearPath applications and, as I mentioned earlier, with no change, because we're leveraging our history of, say, it's roughly 10 years that we've been deploying these on Intel platforms, and in the case of MCP, hosting it on a Windows kernel. That's been in place as a systems that we've been selling under our Libra brand for over 10 years now. In the last couple of years, we've also been allowing clients to deploy that software stack on servers of their choice on Hyper-V and VMware virtualization platforms. So it's a natural transition for us to move that and offer that in Azure. And we can do that because of that layered approach in our technology. It's allowed us to present an approach to our clients that is very risk-free, very straightforward. That ClearPath software stack comes across. It's sitting on a Windows kernel underneath at the lowest level offered by the Azure infrastructure. Their application doesn't change one bit, literally. The digital footprint is the same. It's just running in a different place, initially as that platform as a service. It really is a very low-risk, safe, efficient journey to the public cloud for those existing solutions that our clients have on ClearPath.
And you describe this as an ongoing, logical, cascading transition, standing on the shoulders of your accomplishments and then continuing forward. How is that different from a migration or a lift and shift approach? Why is transition significantly different from migration?
Well, a migration often would involve perhaps third parties doing a recompilation, refactoring of the application, taking that COBOL code, recompiling it, refactoring it into Java, breaking it up, moving the data out of our data formats into a different data structure. All that has risk and disruption associated with it. I'm sure there are partners, third parties that have proven that can work. It takes a long time and introduces risk. For the ClearPath clients who have invested years and years in that system of record, that system of record can now run in a public cloud using our approach as I said before, with absolutely not a single bit of change to the application or the data.
Bob, does that jibe with what you're seeing, that working on a transition basis, as Bob has described it, can be an advantage over a migration as he described it?
Yeah, Chuck described it very well, and we see the very same thing. What I found, and I've been working with Unisys clients since I joined Microsoft in 2001, and what I found early on going to the Unisys Unite conference was that Unisys clients are very committed and dedicated to their platform. That they like the solutions they're using. They're used to using the developer tools. They've built up their business critical, mission critical applications and workloads. And for those customers that continue to be committed to the platform, absolutely, this kind of, I call it replatforming. It could be called transition also, of taking what you currently have and simply moving run on the cloud is absolutely the lowest risk, the least cost, the quickest time to deployment. For those customers and a subset do, just like with every platform, do have an interest to transform to a different platform, then there's other methods available to them. But I would say the vast majority of customers, again, are very committed, especially Unisys customers, committed to that platform, want to stay on it. This provides the fastest way to get to the cloud with the least risk and the quickest benefit.
Chuck, the process around cloud has been going on for a while, as I mentioned. And for those of us who were advocating for cloud 10 or 12 years ago, we were sort of hoping that it would get to this point where it would be a transition. Tell me about the history and the benefits of how ClearPath Forward and Azure have come together specifically. How long has Microsoft and Unisys been at this? And tell me why you think this point in time is, as we mentioned earlier, a bit of a tipping point.
Yeah, it's been a little over a year we've been working on this. We did some initial work with two of our financial application partners in North America, banking partners, to do some initial testing that was very, very positive. Then as we were finishing our engineering work to do the validation, our Unisys organization, which runs about 25 production applications to run the business, went ahead in parallel with us and deployed half of those on MCP in Azure using the process that I've described earlier. Today, they are running 25 production applications. About half of them have been there for about 9 months, the other half for the last 2 months, and doing things like invoicing our customers, tracking our supply chain status, a number of applications. So that journey we've taken not just from an engineering point of view, but we've proven it ourselves. We've drank our own champagne, so to speak. And that's given us a lot of confidence that that's the right way to go. And we expect our clients will see that benefit as well.
We haven't talked about economics too much, but are you finding now that you've been doing this for a while that there's a compelling economic story? A lot of people are fearful that the transition and the migration will be very costly, that they won't necessarily save anything by doing this, and so maybe are resistant. But what's the dollars and cents impact that you've been seeing now that you've been doing this a while, transitioning from ClearPath to Azure?
Yeah, there is some tangible benefits that our IT organization has measured. In these small isolated applications that we're talking about, they've calculated about $500,000 in savings across 3 years in their ROI. And that was nearly immediate because the transition for them was mostly about planning the outage period to ensure a nonstop operation. Scheduling the move, as Bob said, of the replatforming, moving the data from one place to another, and making sure that we always had the business supported. There wasn't actually a lot of labor, just more planning time. So that, I believe in our materials, we'll say that return was almost immediate.
Bob, anything to offer on the economics of making a smooth transition to cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things that I found is catalyst for customers as far as cost savings. If a customer is faced with a potential hardware upgrade, perhaps the server they're running on is ending near end of life, by moving this workload up to the cloud and only paying for the consumption, paying for what you use, it allows you to avoid those hardware upgrade costs. And so you get some nice benefit in cost avoidance. In addition, for workloads such as most customers have test and development environments or user acceptance testing environments in addition to production, again, the beauty of the cloud pricing is you only pay when you're consuming. So for those test and development systems, you don't need to have hardware sitting in the corner waiting to be used during those peak periods. You can spin up an environment in the cloud, you do all your testing, spin it back down. And you get some very nice cost savings by not having dedicated hardware for those test and development environments.
Okay, so we were talking about essentially zero impact on customers taking their workloads and replatforming to a cloud. Let's dig into a little bit about the technology. Obviously, we're not going to go too deep, and there's plenty of resources that people can go to find out more. But what's essentially under the hood that's allowing this seamless cloud transition? Let's start with you, Chuck.
Well, underneath the hood is the architecture that we've transformed to over the last 10 years, where we're already running our ClearPath systems on Intel-based hardware on a Microsoft Windows kernel. That allowed that environment to be used and replatformed in the same manner. We have, to accomplish that originally, we have some very clever technology that allows those Unisys compilers that are generating unique instructions to be emulated on a Intel-based, Windows-based server. So that's really the fundamental underpinnings that first allowed those clients to run on Intel servers instead of on proprietary Unisys designed chips. And once that's been completed, then we're able to be much more flexible on where it's deployed. The rigor to which Microsoft has ensured that Windows is Windows, no matter if it's running on a server you buy, whether it's virtualized on Hyper-V or virtualized in Azure, really allows us to achieve that seamless operation of running in any of those three different environments.
Yeah, Bob, is that where you see the secret sauce, is the ability to have Windows be a pure, if you will, across that hybrid spectrum of deployment models?
Well, and absolutely, the secret sauce definitely, as Chuck described, was that transformation from proprietary instruction sets to standard Intel instruction sets for their systems. And then the beauty of running today on-premise on Hyper-V or VMware as a virtual machine. And then the great thing is with technologies available, it's very, very easy to take virtual machines running in the data center and migrate them to IaaS virtual machines running in the cloud. So, seamless transformation in making that migration. So you're taking everything that's running in your production system or test and development systems and simply deploying them up in a cloud virtual machine instead of on-premise. So great process, and definitely the investment that's been made allows that ability to be able to utilize the cloud.
All right. Well, we've described this pretty clearly, but many people are sort of thinking from a Missouri point of view. They want to, it's a show me type of a perspective. Do we have some examples? Do you have adopters who have gone through this? What have you found? What have you learned? And how were they impacted? How do they benefit? Let's, again, start with you, Chuck.
As I was indicating earlier, our own Unisys IT operation has production applications running our business that run on MCP. Those have all been moved from running in our own data center on a MCP Libre system to now run in Azure. Our Unisys IT organization has been a long-time partner and user of the relationship with Microsoft, Office 365, SharePoint in the cloud. Everything has moved. Other functional operations are running in the cloud. This, in fact, was one of the last remaining Unisys IT operations that was not in the public cloud. That was part of our driver. And they are, as I said earlier, achieving the benefits that they had hoped for and the return on investment in doing so. We have 2 clients. One from a banking partner is about to deploy a disaster recovery instance of their on-premises MCP banking application that's coming from our partner Fiserv. Fiserv's premier banking application is now available for running in Azure on our MCP systems. And one of the clients is choosing to host a DR instance in Azure to support their on-premise, on their bank location production workload. They like that because, as Bob said, they only have to pay for it when they fire it up if they need to use that DR environment. We have another large state government project that we're just about to sign where that client will be doing some of their workload that happens to run on a ClearPath MCP system. We'll be helping them transition and manage that in an Azure public cloud. Once that contract is signed and we get agreement from that organization, we'll be using that as one of our early use case studies.
Yeah, Bob, the public sector with all of their apps, their mainframe apps, seems like a no-brainer to me that that would be a very big opportunity, an addressable market. Any examples that you have either from the public or private sector that illustrate that opportunity?
Well, we have a number of customers, specifically on the Unisys MCP platform, that are evaluating moving their workload from their data center into the cloud. We don't have a production system as far as I know yet, but they're in the late stages of making that decision. And as Chuck mentioned, one other comment is that when you think of using the cloud, there's so many ways of utilizing the cloud for things like disaster recovery at a very low cost instead of having to have a separate data center or failover system. Things like even leaving your production on premise in the short term and standing up your test and development in the cloud, running the MCP system in that way. And then once you're in the cloud, that ability to set up a high availability disaster recovery system or high availability system, even within the same Azure data center, to fail over from one system to another if you have an outage, and at a very, very low cost. So there's great benefits. One other I'll mention is elasticity. But when I talk about customers, they say, well, gee, I've got this end of month process and I've got to have a larger mainframe because of the higher capacity that I need. Well, the beauty of the cloud is the ability to grow and shrink those VMs when you need more capacity for end of month process. Again, you don't have to pre-purchase the hardware. You really pay for the consumption of the capacity when you need it. So great advantages, and that's what we talk to customers about, is where they can get benefits from considering deploying these systems in the cloud. And those are some great examples of why we're in late stage conversations with several customers about deploying this solution.
And I suppose it's a little bit early to address this, but there are higher order benefits when you do make the transition. You mentioned a little earlier around artificial intelligence, machine learning, getting your data into a more data process and executable environment where you can take advantage of analysis. So while we're not maybe there yet with these particular workloads, is that another shoe to fall and to drop when it comes to that return on investment? That you're able to, in fact, do things with the data that you just couldn't have done before when you make a transition to cloud.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. When you think of moving these systems up to the cloud, that way you're close to the new workloads, the advanced services that you can utilize to be able to analyze that data. It's really about turning data into intelligent action. You think of back in the 80s and 90s or even 2000s when you were building an application, a custom application, you had to pretty much code everything yourself. Today, the way you build an application is to consume services. There is no reason for a customer to build a machine learning application from scratch. Instead, you consume machine learning services from the cloud. And so once you're in the cloud, it opens up a world of possibilities of being able to continue that digital transformation journey.
Mm-hmm. And I can confirm that that's a key element for our product proposition as well from a ClearPath point of view. We have some existing technology, particular component called data exchange, that it does an outstanding change data capture model where we can pump the data coming into that back-end system of record, pump it out to, for example, a Kafka queue, and feed that into an AI machine learning application that's already in place. And one of the key areas for future investment, now that we have done this replatforming, and essentially, initially this is platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, we're extending our ePortal technology and other enabling software to ensure that these ClearPath applications really fit well and leverage that cloud-native architecture. That's really the direction that we see a lot of benefit, as Bob said, as we bring these applications into the public Azure cloud.
All right. Thank you for that, Chuck. And sticking with you also to my next question, Chuck, if you are a ClearPath Forward client, you have these apps and data, what steps should you be taking now in order to put yourself in an advantageous position to make this transition? Are there sort of steps before the journey, or how should you be thinking in order to take advantage of these newer technologies?
I think, first of all, we should engage with your Unisys and Microsoft contacts that work with your organization to begin consultation on those on that journey. Data backup, data replication, disaster recovery, those elements around data and your policy with respect to data are the things that are likely going to change the most as you move from where you are to a different platform, whether that's from a Libra system to an on-premise virtualized infrastructure or into Azure. What you've done for replication with a certain disk subsystem probably won't be there. It'll be done in a different way, and likely it'll be done in a better way. The way you do your backups will be done differently. Now, we have partnered with our partner DSI, and they offer a virtualized virtual tape solution. So you can still use your backup scripts, your WIFLs on MCP to do backups in exactly the same way in Azure, but you may choose to alter the way you do backups. So your strategy for data and how you handle that, which is so very important to these enterprise class, quote, mainframe applications, that's probably the place where you'll need to do the most thinking and planning is around data handling.
For those who are familiar with BriefingsDirect, we tend to like to end our discussions with a forward-looking vision view, an idea of what's coming next. So when it comes to migrating, transitioning, getting more into the cloud environments, be that hybrid or pure public cloud, what's going to come next in terms of helping people make the transition, but also give them the payoff when they get there? Let's start with you, Bob. What's going to be the case 2 or 3 years from now? What we'll be talking about?
It's a great question because you think of the world of opportunity, the world of possibility. I look back at my 47 years in the industry, and it's been incredible to see the transformations that have occurred, the technology advancements that have occurred, and they're coming fast and furious. There's nothing slowing it down. And so when we see the cloud, where today a lot of customers are still considering setting a cloud first strategy for building any new solutions, you go into the cloud first and have to justify staying on premise, and then customers will move from that to do a cloud only strategy, whereas they're able to not only deploy new solutions but migrate their existing workloads such as ClearPath up to the cloud. They get to a point where they'll be able to shut down most of what they're running in the data center and get out of that business of operating that infrastructure, having that operations support being provided for them. And then moving on to transforming through a cultural change their own staff, where today people that are managing, maintaining, running these systems, they'll have an opportunity to learn new skills, embrace new ways of doing things, such as cloud technology. So what I see over the next 2 to 3 years is a continuation of that journey, that transformation, not just of the solutions that customers use, but also of the culture of the people that operate and run those solutions.
All right, Chuck, last word to you. For your clients, for the installed base across the world, why should they be optimistic about the next 2 or 3 years? What's your vision for how their situation is only going to improve?
At the moment, everything we've talked about today is pretty much focused on our ClearPath MCP market and the technology that those clients use. As we go forward into 2021, we'll be providing similar capabilities for our ClearPath OS 2200 client base, and we'll be growing the offering. Today, we're starting with the low end of the customer base, development tests, DR, the smaller images. As the Azure cloud matures, as it scales up to handle our scaling needs from our larger clients, we'll see that maturing, and we'll see us offering the full range of product in the Azure cloud on up to our largest systems. That's one of building confidence across the board in our client base, in Microsoft and in Unisys. We want to crawl, then walk, then run. And that journey, we believe, is the safe way to go. And as I mentioned earlier, this initial workload transformation is occurring through a replatforming. The real exciting work is as we bring cloud native capabilities to do better integration of those systems of record with better systems of engagement that the cloud native technology is offering. And we've got some really interesting pieces under development now that will make that additional transformation straightforward so that clients can leverage that, continue to leverage that back-end investment in those systems. So we're really excited about the future.
Well, very good. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. You've been listening to a sponsored Briefings Direct discussion on the latest on-ramps to secure and agile cloud adoption for mainframe applications. And we've learned how a partnership between Unisys and Microsoft allows for many organizations to move their applications and data to a cloud model without degrading these venerable and essential systems of record. So please join me in thanking our guests. We've been here with Chuck Lefebvre, Senior Director of Product Management for ClearPath Forward at Unisys. Thank you so much, Chuck.
Thank you.
And a big thank you as well to Bob Ellsworth, Worldwide Director of Mainframe Transformation at Microsoft. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And a big thank you as well to our audience for joining this Briefings Direct Cloud Computing Adoption Best Practices discussion. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host throughout this series of Unisys and Microsoft-sponsored Briefings Direct discussions. Thanks again for listening. Please pass this along to your IT community and do come back next time.